Kylo Ren also has a habit of making a lot of unnecessary assumptions and/or leaps in logic and letting his temper get the better of him. At the risk of going back to the prequels, Anakin Skywalker was anything but calculating, but this is a completely new level of whack. I mean, where's Admiral Thrawn when you need him? The only reason the First Order is on Jakku at the beginning of the movie is to get their hands on a piece of the map that Luke used to go AWOL, a piece that Lor Taka somehow managed to get his hands on. Then, after Finn and Poe bust out of First Order Arkham's Star Destroyer, Kylo Ren finds out, or at the very least assumes, that FN-2187 is making a play for the map, and his solution is to send stormtroopers back to Jakku to intercept BB-8, the very same stormtroopers that he just made clear he distrusted after getting into a pissing contest by cussing fake-ass ghetto Hitler General Hux, who, by the way, is willing to blow up an entire system just to with Kylo about how disloyal birth stormtroopers are in comparison to clone troopers, since Kylo cites that as the reason for Finn's defection, not to mention breaking a resistance pilot out of captivity. At some point, I have to wonder if Kylo and Hux are dysfunctional cousins, or I have no idea why the hell they're constantly at each other's throats when the entire reason either of them is on this mission is to get Luke Skywalker. I also don't get why Kylo Ren would be interested in Rey unless he somehow knows her from somewhere, or come to think of it, why he thinks it's that girl. So one of Hux's lackeys informs Kylo Ren that FN-2187, BB-8, and the map have escaped Jakku aboard the Millennium Falcon, and Kylo slices up the room with his fireball jutsu lightsaber complete with a Hans Zimmer boom sound effect, despite the fact that this movie is being composed by John Williams. Then he mentions that Finn and the droid were accompanied by a girl, and that for whatever reason causes an involuntary spasm where he grabs the man by the neck via Jedi telekinesis, dark side telekinesis, we get it, motherfucker, and says, "What girl?" So here's my question. Does Kylo Ren know her from somewhere, or is that just another assumption? The dude said a girl, so if he does know about Rey, why does he assume she's the girl? I especially don't get why Kylo Ren assumes Rey knows more about the map than Finn or BB-8. She's a junker from a f***ing desert planet, and she just got here. When Kylo Ren is face to face with Rey on Takodana, he decides he doesn't need the droid and captures Rey on the logic that she knows where Skywalker is. The girl. She's seen the map. She knows something. What droid? Nah, those. We have what we need with her. What the actual hell? This motherfucker is so fixated on Rey that I wonder why he gives a damn about Finn's defection. You'd think Captain Phasma would be more pissed off about it than Kylo, since she's also a stormtrooper. Other stormtroopers seem to be pissed with Finn, like the Taser Trooper FN-2199. I wonder if we could hear what Stormtrooper 1142 EMA has to say about it. And while we're at it, what's Phasma's damage? Why is she such a stick in the mud? When Rey escapes captivity via mind trick and is on the loose on Starkiller base, Kylo goes into a fireball rage so destructive that two stormtroopers turn around and are basically like, "F that shit, I got shit I'm doing," and walk away. Which is only slightly funnier than that's not how the Force works. Maybe those stormtroopers were trained by Gary the Stormtrooper, I don't know. My point is that, like Rey, Kylo Ren makes a lot of weird assumptions and decisions in this movie that come out of nowhere and for no good reason, and for someone who's supposed to be the next Darth Vader, Kylo Ren is a hit-and-miss villain and not a very strategic one. The idea that this is the person responsible for the death of an iconic Star Wars character is kinda lame and kinda insulting, especially considering that he apparently needs to be more powerful than Vader and the Emperor to be even close to threatening. And finally, what is the ever-loving deal with Snoke? Where the hell did Snoke even come from? Where is he at? A lot of people online theorize that he's Sidious's old master, Darth Plagueis, even though he's clearly of a different species from Plagueis. Plagueis doesn't have a nose. This motherfucker clearly does. Come to think of it, I wonder why parts of his face are missing. Maz Kanata does refer to the dark side as the Sith in one scene, but that's kind of where any connection to the prequel trilogy ends. I've listened to several theories on YouTube. None of them do anything to tell me what's going on. But in the context of this movie, what's Snoke's endgame? What did Luke Skywalker do to piss him off besides being a Jedi? Why did Snoke organize the First Order using spare parts from the Empire? Supposedly he's seen the Empire begin and end and knows about the Clone Wars and things that happened prior to that. Why does it take him 30 to 60 years to A, make a move, B, get himself an army, C, go after the Republic, and D, get himself an apprentice? What the hell's even keeping him alive if he's that old? And most importantly, why does he put 3 people who are clearly terrible at their job in charge of the Hellspawn clone of the Galactic Empire? Working behind the scenes is one thing, but being the head of an organization like this seems like a pretty damn important job. At some point, you gotta stop playing freeze tag with your enemies and step it up. At the end of the movie, when Starkiller base is being blown the up, Snoke tells not Hitler to get Kylo Ren off the planet, saying that it's time for Ren to complete his training. Wait a minute, why hasn't he completed his training? And how much training does the motherfucker need when he can freeze a shotgun blast in midair using dark side telekinesis? You'll notice I haven't said very much about General Hux and Captain Phasma, and that's because, well, there really isn't a whole lot to say about them. Fake-ass ghetto space Hitler, move on. Female Boba Fett stormtrooper who works for the First Order, move on. Seriously, has Thrawn been on a smoke break this entire series? By the end of the movie, Snoke, Kylo, Hux, and Phasma somehow manage to escape Starkiller base before it explodes. Within the context of this movie, the First Order as a whole makes no sense. Their motivations are all over the place, most likely because they're constantly butting heads, and the rules about how powerful they seem to be both in military strength and in the Force change faster than a pod racer on stick shift. And in a movie where the villains and antagonists don't make any more sense than the protagonists, I can't decide if that's a good thing. On the practical side, this movie feels like a proverbial middle finger to the Star Wars prequels and how bad the CGI was in those films. Most, if not all, of this movie feels like a combination of location shooting and sound stages. Some of the CGI is well integrated enough not to notice. The motion capture for Snoke and Maz Kanata looks as well as it can, but I'm impressed with the practical effects of making BB-8 look real, even if BB-8's design doesn't make all that much sense by itself. But that's what makes this movie such a bittersweet experience. I'm glad I went to see this movie. In a lot of ways, The Force Awakens feels like Star Wars. It feels like that old Star Wars universe. It feels like everybody wants to be there. It kind of feels like the next chapter in the original Star Wars saga, even though it's part of a brand new trilogy. It feels like it has a personality, even if most of that personality comes more from John Boyega, Daisy Ridley, and Oscar Isaac than anything. It's fun to see some of the original cast for what little they have to work with. Nearly every new character is exceptionally well cast and having a ball. As a standalone movie, I can't quite figure out what it wants to say about its new protagonist or its antagonist. It's up to personal preference as to whether or not you think this movie is better than the original trilogy, but it's certainly funnier and having more fun with itself than the prequel trilogy by a long shot. As a Star Wars film, it's not perfect and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I at least understand what universe it belongs to. Like Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, with the exception of a few scenes, it's far from unwatchable. It's a beautiful, entertaining ride with a bittersweet ending. So I'm giving Star Wars The Force Awakens a 3 out of 4. The lackluster and confusing bunch of villains and an inconsistent character motivation drags it down a little.